I'm here at Keele University as part of the Coffee House Sessions tour with lovely Tallulah Rendall.
No.
And you can actually catch your Another Love cover on Coffee House Sessions tour, little bar over there on the YouTube one. So yeah, obviously you just released your album, what, fortnight or so ago, there or thereabouts, so it must be nice to come on the road and sort of showcase that music, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, so this is the album for you lot, and so the Banshee and the Moon, I've actually been gigging it for quite a while, and I was kind of holding back releasing it because I really wanted to get a kind of team of people around me to do it, but it's just, you know, there comes a point where it felt like it was just ready to get it out into the world, and no one had materialised, and so many really cool things were happening, like the tour and the award that we're going to talk about, and BBC introducing and stuff. So I thought, you know what, let's just put it out there.
Put it out there,
So yeah, it's been great. I tell you what's been great is kind of playing to students, because I've done loads of touring before, and Australia and New Zealand and around Europe. And lots of festivals, but it's very different going into like a student union and on a kind of 12 o'clock, and everyone's kind of just like a bit bleary-eyed, and then you've got this 20-minute window to engage with them, and yeah, it's pretty intense, but it's, you know, there's been little pockets of real kind of amazingness. So.
Well, you are, like you just mentioned, somewhat of a traveller. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? You do travel the world. So is that something you do to sort of gather inspiration for your music, perhaps? Because I read parts of that book actually the other day. I read about 20 pages or so when I got the chance online last night. And you went to the Himalayas for a couple of songs on this,
I mean, I'm just a traveller at heart. Both my parents, I kind of grew up in an eccentric household of kind of creative people with, you know, a basement full of vinyl, and, you know, music was always kind of mayhem, and both of them travelled like all the time, and so it's kind of always been embedded in me, I think. And I just, you know, when I left Manchester, I kind of had this kind of, I was like, do I want to kind of go to performing arts school, or what do I want to do? And I was just like, I just wanted to travel. I wanted to kind of go to South America, and I kind of felt like there was so much of the world to see that I'd kind of been reading about in books. And there's just something about going to a different land, and it's the smells and the colours and the sounds and the instruments and the people that's really inspiring. I
suppose it's not quite the same as popping over to the Himalayas, but on this Coffee House Sessions tour, you're sort of going around all the student union bars and that, aren't you, at the moment? So are you enjoying yourself so far?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying myself. It's the student unions have like a vibe. There's like a kind of like there's a lot of lime green, and there's a lot of like brightly coloured kind of poofy kind of furniture. So it's gonna.
It's just like the Himalayas, isn't it?
It's just like the Himalayas, basically,
That's what they say about student union bars.
Yeah, it's just like the Himalayas, A couple of yaks outside, you know, it's gonna.
And obviously about your album as well. I say about a fortnight. Was it the 28th? You finally released it, and
finally released it.
What's the reception been like for you from it?
Yeah, it's been. I mean, to be honest, I have absolutely no idea, because I've just been on the road in the back of a transit van, well, a Suzuki van for the last kind of so. I don't know. Good, I hope. I mean, it's different with because it's like, for me, like this. There was, you know, it was crowdfunded, so hundreds, 500 of copies of this record have already been bought. And that happened like, 9 months ago. So all the people that were part of the crowdfunding and all the reviews and all that kind of stuff, a lot of that happened a long time ago, and there was a really amazing response when I first kind of started putting it out, and kind of speaking to journalists and sending it out to the crowdfunders, and so I think it's the kind of now, I guess, the people that don't know me, because like my fan base and supporters have known about this album for a little while, I guess is what I'm kind of trying to get around to saying. So it's the fact, like you know, you were like, oh, I'm going to buy the album so I can listen to it. It's like, oh yay, new person liking it, checking it out.
Well, that's the thing though, because crowdfunding, you sort of put in your, well, I don't know, you're trying to be brave and say, look, this is what I'm doing, do you want to support me? So is it quite difficult sometimes to sort of say, this is me, you know? Do you want to believe in me, you know?
Yes. I mean, it's kind of, it's hard enough. God, just finding the courage to get up on stage and write songs, and then, then I had this kind of idea 3 albums ago that I wanted my albums to be like to be presented as books, and I wanted pieces of artwork, and that was my kind of little mission. And then, trying to get people involved in that was kind of quite a big thing to kind of then go out and be like, this is what I want to do. And with the first crowdfunding for Libellus, the first album, it was okay. I didn't have that many pledges. The second time round I did it through Pledge Music, and I was doing it at a time when people hadn't really crowdfunded, so it was really educating people. So not only was I going to people saying, okay, I want to make this record, do you want to get involved in it, and you can buy a piece of art or a dance lesson. We had loads of random things involved in it, and some people were like, what? You want money? You want free money to go and make a record? Say no, it's not free money. You're and having
investing in you.
And really having to explain that for people, and just the confidence that's needed to actually pick someone, like make that phone call or write that email or just speak to someone face to face. So it's really I had to go through quite a lot of because there's also that part of you that's like, okay, why aren't I signed? Do I want to be signed? I'm kind of been in this industry for quite a while, and should I try and get signed? That kind of all those other kind of psychological things that start kind of banding around. And I don't know, for me, just the crowdfunding experience, whilst the initial part was really like, has become one of the most rewarding and encouraging, because people are so supportive. They really get behind you. Like on this tour, all the people we're staying with are pledges. We spent the last 3 nights staying at Pledge's house. They just gave us the keys and they went away for the weekend. That's just like was a random person that then has become part of this journey. And that's every night this week. We're just staying with someone there. Like, what do you want to eat? Come have a bath. So it's like, for me as an independent artist, I couldn't afford to stay in hotels for this trip. I couldn't afford that. So it's made my career possible, basically.
And the books themselves, it sort of helps you explore your own creative side, other people's as well, because a lot of people, like you say, get involved. Is that where did the idea for a book come from? Was it just literally, like I say, just trying to explore your creative side?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of from growing up with my mum ran nightclubs, so the bottom of our house was full of vinyl, and just loving vinyl. And just think it was so beautiful, and that's why the album's also available on vinyl. It's just such an amazing, beautiful thing to have a kind of 12-inch gatefold record. But then also I guess I was releasing. I first started in the music industry when people were downloading music for free, and it was really hard for an artist to survive. You don't get paid for gigs really that in England that often, and if you're kind of working all the hours that God gives to pay your rent and working all these other jobs, and then you're doing gigs in the evening and it's just there's no money. I was just like, okay, I kind of felt like the value of music had kind of just degenerated.
I got you mean.
And I kind of felt like I wanted to reconnect people with the artist's story, and be like, okay, there's loads of manufactured artists that don't have the story that me or my community of friends might want to tell, but like for those of us that live and breathe this, that write our own music, that play our own instruments, that self-manage, run labels and are completely independent, it's a very different life. It's a very different life to what's out there to the mainstream. And so I really wanted to tell that story, and I really wanted people to really reconnect with the story of like the Joni Mitchell stories, or the Nick Drake, or the JJ Cale, or the Stones, artists when they were artists, and one of the things that I've been doing recently was living room tours, so going into people's houses, going into theatres, going into kitchens. I spent last year playing 35, 40 gigs in the UK and Germany, just going into people's homes, and I'd do 2.5-hour gigs. I'd play God knows how many songs, and then I tell these stories. I tell the stories behind the songs, and people were genuinely baffled by some of the things, they would have no idea that you wouldn't get paid to play a festival, or any of that kind of stuff that you would just presume.
I think it's the X Factor generation. You think it's dead easy and dead straightforward to get into. I think a lot of people do think it's just a straightforward path, but
and it's the kind of X Factor and the voice thing. It's like a real kind of double-edged sword, because from one side I'm so I'm pro the fact that people are being creative, and everyone has that within themselves, and I'm really pro that. But at the same time,
it's a dangerous game, isn't it?
It's kind of, I think, undervalued. Actually, the artist. The artist as a singer-songwriter artist, someone that lives and breathes their craft and that isn't famous, that does it because they have to do it for themselves as a creative being, not because they want to be on the front of a magazine. Don't run, she's ranted.
Let's wrap up so you can sort of pop off.
Else.
But yeah, obviously I just mentioned it before, Lions. You must be asked it in pretty much every interview. But your dad bought a lion from Harrods once. Let's tell that story.
Yeah,
as you do. Yeah.
Well, actually, it was his dad. I'm going to blame Nicky. It was my dad as well. But.
Yeah.
So in the late 60s, 70s, my dad and his best mate came over from Australia, and you know, they were hippies. And in the 60s and 70s, you did kind of this kind of stuff. They ran a furniture store called Gandalf's Garden, as you do, and decided to buy a lion cub for £300 from Harrods, which they did, and then proceeded to nourish and rear this amazing animal, and then managed to get the Kenyan government to agree to take him back out to Africa and successfully rehabilitate him.
The best bit of the story is coming up though.
So the best bit of the story is that a couple of years later they went back to Africa, and George Adamson, who was the man that rehabilitated Christian, was like kind of prepping them, so you know he's probably not going to recognise you. And there's this kind of like amazing clip which someone synced to Whitney Houston's "I Will Always Love You," which I think is what clinched the deal, because there's this kind of like slow-mo of this like lion kind of running down the hill, and it's just like "I will always," and it kind of leaps into their arms, and it's just like, you know, you're not quite sure if it's going to rip their head off or give them a big cuddle.
The best thing is I told my sister about this, and she said that's her. She already knew the story, she'd already seen the video.
What's so extraordinary is that little clip was put on by this American film student who was like clearing out the archives, and she put it on like 5 years ago, and suddenly it just went totally global. And my dad, who was like happily doing PR for a hotel company, was suddenly like going around on Oprah talking about something that he'd done like 30 years before. So it's been quite a crazy ride for the family.